Thank you, Don, and thanks, Don, also for being a great support over the years. And I have to say, when you're in Wellington, it's wonderful to have someone to ring to that you can get sense about climate change policies, because there's not many people that talk sense about that policy in this country. Also, thanks for inviting me along. It's great to be with the people that produce the wealth of New Zealand rather than with those that just consume it. I should also acknowledge Nick Clark from Federated Farmers, who has given me a lot of help in my responsibilities as Minister of Local Government. And it's also great to have the President of Local Government New Zealand and the Mayor of Hastings, Lawrence Yule, who's helped me as a new Minister understanding the sector, and he and I are working together mostly to make things better for New Zealanders. And also it's great to see the Honourable Damien O'Connor here, whose return to Parliament has greatly improved Parliament. So it's good to see you here. It's clear that agriculture is one of the few areas where New Zealand leads the world, and we're the 12th largest agricultural exporter by value. The success of New Zealand agriculture is reflected in its value to our economy, and of course I think everyone understands that, although we often forget it. A badly performing economy impacts on us all, regardless of whether we're employers, employees, the superannuitants or the self-employed, and that's why a growing economy is one of this government's key priorities. To grow the economy, we need to create the right environment, which means reducing bureaucracy and reducing regulatory and compliance demands. The work that I have underway, both as Minister of Regulatory Reform and Minister of Local Government, aims to make an important contribution to creating the right environment to foster growth. I've had a lot of valuable input from farmers, in fact more than I can handle, both in meetings I've attended and in the letters that I've received. The messages have been very clear. Farmers are paying too much in rates, Lawrence, and this is impacting on the economic viability of your farms. Many of you also feel that council expenditure has got out of hand, and you're certainly not alone in thinking about that. As Minister, I'm very clear about what needs to be done. First, we need to focus on reducing local government costs. Containing council costs will benefit all ratepayers, including the rural sector, through reduced rate demands. Just as central government has had to cut its spending in the current economic climate, so too does local government. Local government needs to consider how it can contain costs and limit rate increases. Councils should be looking at each and every item of expenditure. They need to be assessing if every service they provide and every project they plan is necessary, and they need to be listening, at this time especially, very carefully to what ratepayers are saying. Councils need to do better in some areas. They should be streamlining procedures and processes to ensure that their services are as efficient as possible. I have to say that some councils' procedures for processing resource consents are good examples of how not to run a service. Consent applications are paying a high price, and so too is the country, for these poor processes through significant delays and costs and frustrations. The delays don't just affect the applicants, they can also impact on a region's economy by delaying or discouraging economic growth. As farmers and significant contributors to the national economy, you well understand that we cannot afford these sorts of unwarranted and avoidable hindrances to improving our economic performance. This is especially so in our current economic climate, which is unlikely to improve in the short run. The government wants ratepayers to have greater confidence in and control over councils. That means that councils' decision making must be clear, it must be transparent, and it must be accountable to ratepayers in a meaningful way. We're taking a number of actions to try to achieve a more streamlined, efficient and responsive local government sector. One of the most important areas of work in my local government portfolio is enhancing local accountability and reducing the process burden that central government imposes on local government. The work aims to ensure that ratepayers and citizens have more control over council costs, rates and council activities. Some commentators have portrayed the proposals as a threat to local democracy, but that is not correct. The review is not about stopping councils from doing things. It is about giving ratepayers and citizens more tools to have a greater say in what is done on their behalf and with their money. It is about simplifying processes and ensuring that ratepayers and citizens have the right information to make informed decisions about what they want for their communities. The review is guided by the following principles: that local government should operate within a defined fiscal envelope, that councils should focus on core activities, and that council decision-making should be clear, transparent and accountable. It has 3 related work streams. The first is long-term planning and financial management. The second is management of service performance. And the third is accountability and decision-making. The first work stream aims to reduce the complexity and the cost of long-term planning processes, which quite frankly are ridiculous. It will also consider how council's financial reporting can be improved to provide better and more easily understood information. And may I say, information that's comparable over the years and amongst councils. Planning documents such as the long-term council community plans play an important role in council's accountability to their communities, but the size and complexity of these plans often make them difficult to understand and can deter citizens from participating in decision-making processes. Much of the financial information provided by councils is incomprehensible to the layperson and certainly to this minister. Having access to useful information that can be readily understood is crucial if communities are to hold their councils to account. Information needs to be plain English, and ratepayers need to know what activities their money is being spent on. Officials will examine the merits of councils preparing financial strategies to set limits on rates, debt and expenditure, and to prioritise expenditure. Under this approach, councils then set priorities within these limits rather than collating a wish list and then figuring out how ratepayers are going to pay for it. They will also consider pre-election financial updates, which would ensure that councils give a proper account of activities over the previous 3 years and identify proposed items of expenditure over the next 3 years. This would give electors a chance to put hard questions to candidates about past and proposed expenditure and to encourage debate about spending priorities. The second work stream will look at whether changes are needed to the current requirements around identifying and monitoring community outcomes. It is debatable whether this is a good use of council resources. Officials will be examining options for more focused and less costly service performance reporting system. The third work stream is about enhancing council's accountability to their ratepayers and to citizens. It seems to me that there are 2 issues. The first is the total cost of councils, and the second is within that budget, council priorities. The councils that I have discovered that control their budgets set a clear fiscal strategy, and if you think about it, that would stand to reason. Once a fiscal strategy is to be set, the question is, who is to set it? And it seems to me the answer is plain. It should be the ratepayers. After all, it's their money that's being spent. Accordingly, officials are examining options for allowing voters at election time to tick a box and thereby control council spending to, say, the rate of inflation. So total cost is an issue, but within that budget, so too are council priorities. Many ratepayers, especially farmers, have written to me concerned about rate rises, but they've also written to me too because they're worried and angry at having to pay for facilities that they don't want or feel